We've seen as to how the AC as well as the cooler industry has performed in FY18. There's a new acquisition that they've made? Is that going to be earnings accretive? They're increasing large players. So is that going to hurt profitability? So let's try and understand really which way Symphony is headed as a business. Achal Bakeri, founder, chairman and MD at Symphony, joins us on the show right now. Mr. Bakeri, morning. The summer of 2018 has started off on a rather, weak note, despite IMD predicting a harsh summer. The consumer offtake has thus far been weak. That's what, analysts seem to be estimating. What is the kind of growth that you're penciling in for the next quarter? Is it a low single digits that we can expect from you?
I suppose you mean the current quarter, which will end tomorrow.
That's right.
In the current quarter, the growth is going to be muted. And I'm being a little generous with that term. However, the next quarter, which will begin in July, we expect to do much better. But the current quarter, which will end tomorrow, as well as the previous quarter, which ended in March, both have been disappointing for us.
Why? Because you got everything going for yourself. You got new products. Because of GST, the unorganized market is shifting towards organized market. And let's be real, the cooler market now has become no longer a necessity market. It has become an aspirational market. I've looked at your products and they are quite unique and they are quite nice. So at a time when the environment and conditions are right for you to grow, why are things not adding up the way your investors would like them to see?
Well, not only investors, as we would ourselves like it to see, but more than anything else, it has been the weather. The summer came in parts of the country fairly late. In some other parts of the country, it was a very weak summer, interspersed with rain and some unseasonal, showers and things like that. So I think all in all, for the cooler industry, the summer wasn't quite what was expected. And, unlike air conditioners, coolers are a very impulse purchase. And especially coolers, which are basically because they are portable and they are low ticket value in compared to air conditioners. So they are to a great degree, a very high degree of impulsiveness in the purchase. Whereas an air conditioner is more of a planned purchase. So regardless of how the summer pans out, a consumer is going to buy an air conditioner, is going to buy an air conditioner. Whereas for the cooler, because it's really almost like a plug and play product. So the day the temperature sort of shoots over 42, 43, the consumer goes out, buys a product, comes home, plugs it in and starts using it. So when the temperature, the peak temperatures get deferred as they did this summer, the tendency is for them to defer the entire purchase. They might think that, okay, we'll just sort of, bear it for another week or two. The rains are around the corner and, we'll probably buy a cooler next year. So despite all the economic conditions being favorable, like you mentioned, the weather conditions were not. And as far as our products are concerned, like I said, the correlation with the temperature is far greater than the correlation with the economy. So the higher the temperature and sooner that we get high temperatures, the better it is for the industry and for our sales. So it's not just Symphony which has been impacted, but from what we gather from market sources and from our own sort of information, is that the entire cooler industry has been impacted.
So, Mr. Bakeri, what you're saying net is that this is just a seasonality issue. Summer has been bad this time around, so people have not bought any coolers. Or is there a trend change that you're seeing that people are buying more of ACs now as opposed to coolers?
Oh no, absolutely not. Okay. No. There are no structural shifts. So there are no changes in consumer behavior. Coolers are continue to be a product which has a market of its own, and air conditioners have a market of their own, so the two don't the twain really doesn't meet. And there are homes where coolers and air conditioners both coexist. Now, sitting in Bombay where you are, you might not quite have experienced this, but across the the length and breadth of the country, there are homes which have only coolers, or there are homes where coolers and air conditioners coexist. So it isn't as if air conditioners are the air conditioning industry is eating our lunch. That isn't the reality.
In your opening remarks, you said that this quarter may not be very good. Last quarter was not very great, but you expect things to pick up. I'm curious to know that at a time when you think that weather is playing as a spoil sport, why do you expect in the monsoon quarter or the post-summer season quarter things will pick up?
That's because our sales in the monsoon and the winter quarters are primarily to the trade, and the trade buys in anticipation for a good next summer. So the sales that we will probably do in the next 2 quarters will really not end up going to the end user. It will really be sales to the channel, and the channel stocks up in the off season for the summer to follow. So the last summer or the current summer, which will the quarter which will end tomorrow, will have a certain overhang on the sentiment of the channel, but at the same time, we also sense a certain optimism for next summer, because we have seen 2 consecutive relatively weak summers, the summer of 2017 and the summer of 2018, and that itself is an aberration. 2 consecutively weak summers is an aberration. 2016 was a great summer. What the channel believes and what people believe is that a third consecutive bad summer is an impossibility. We have to have a good summer in 2019. So with that anticipation, we expect that the channel will buy and stock up in the next 2 quarters.
How large, Mr. Bakeri, do you think is the entire cooler market in India? It's a very unorganized market. It's a market where we know that there are mom and shop stores which are dominant. You call up your gali ka cooler wala and he'll give you 2 coolers in 48 hours and bina bill ke kaam hota hai. So how large is this market? How much have you gained in terms of a market share? And because of this entire GST impact, why are you not witnessing sizable increase in your revenue?
The overall cooler market in our estimation, because like you said, it's greatly dominated by the unorganized sector, and for the unorganized sector there are no reliable numbers to come by, but from our understanding over the years is that the current size of the market is about 8 million units per annum, of which only about 25% is catered to by the organized sector. The balance 75%, or let's say give or take about 6 million, is still catered to by the unorganized sector. And despite GST and despite all of that, the unorganized sector, contrary to what all of us had expected, that GST and demon will lead a shift from the unorganized to the organized in every category, that really quite hasn't happened. And that's not only true for coolers. Every category, wherever there is a dominating unorganized sector, they have still, despite GST, found ways to circumvent the GST regime. And so the unorganized sector, the parallel economy, is thriving as well as it did in the past. Now with the e-way bill, things may be different, but then again time will tell, because Indian businessmen are ingenious to and they do find ways around, so the unorganized sector is still thriving in our industry, and we haven't really quite seen a major shift to the organized sector.
So, Mr. Bakeri, you started the interview, you said that it's going to be muted single digits that you're going to report in the quarterly performance. That's for the quarter that we've just ended. How bad could it be?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
So correct me then, please.
I am not at liberty to say. No, I will not be able to correct you. We'll have to wait for our board meeting next month, not the month after, when we will sort of announce the numbers. At this point, I would not be able to share those numbers.
Okay, but just to summarize our today's interaction, can I safely say that in general, for the air conditioning market, for the air cooler market, the summer 2018 has been another disappointing year? Can I safely assume that?
You can say that for the air cooler industry for sure. I wouldn't. Air conditioners is not our business, so I wouldn't really venture to sort of comment on their numbers.
Close the show with something which will make you feel very happy and your shareholders feel very happy. I'll request my producer to put the 10-year chart or the 8-year chart of Symphony. Now the summer 2017 may be disappointing, 18 may not be great, but for those who actually bought your stock 7-8 years ago, and I know some of our common friends who've invested in your company, the ride has been fabulous. It was an BFR company, where you were versus where you are right now. Look at the performance in this kind of an environment to give this kind of an striking performance. It was a sub 500 rupees stock, post bonus, post adjustment. You put all those factors together, the run up has been quite extraordinary. If I stretch the graph and go to 2010, I guess the returns have been nothing short of a multi-bagger. So it was always it's always a pleasure to interact with Mr. Bakeri, and thank you for joining us. And I've always admired your courage, the way you've managed to bring a BFIR company out of where it was. I think it's quite extraordinary.
Thank you very much for your words.